Really excited to have him on. He's been on the show before. Ali Abunimah, he's been described as the leading American proponent of a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and is a co-founder of the Electronic Intifada. Should we play this clip that is now being denounced and has a clip that has launched 1,000 petitions?
I mean, it's a big deal. Just to prepare people, it's a big deal because there was actually a funny and biting joke on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And that in itself
is newsworthy, right?
Is a major story. So
Yeah. And we're going to get some, and Jack, by the way, is a very interesting guest because he is someone who has had a personal feud with Michael Che, but he's so committed to fairness that he's going to, as you'll see, defend him.
We'll talk about this,
Okay.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
Now, I should have offered a trigger warning because that is anti-Semitic, racist bile that perpetuates libel somehow, the blood libel thing. That doesn't even work. Like, guys, do better. We can do better. There's there's so many anti-Semitic stereotypes. You got to be able to find one that works better with that one. But that is now being condemned. And of course, perhaps if Israel were actually vaccinating everyone, including and if they were not blocking COVID vaccinations from getting into Gaza, perhaps it would be an unfair thing to say. But Ali, can you tell us about the reality there?
Yeah, I mean, that, first of all, like I said, I just want to get this off my chest before we get into the serious stuff, is that one of the things I cannot understand about the United States is like why every Monday or Sunday or whatever it is, there are news reports about what was on Saturday Night Live.
I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of literally just describing television shows, and that is news. That's news.
Particularly Saturday Night Live, as if Saturday Night Live is one of the branches of government.
Yeah.
But this is actually somewhat newsworthy because Michael Che's joke there was biting, and the reason that Israel defenders and Israel lobby are going nuts over it and denouncing it as anti-Semitic is because it points to a truth that is pretty unpalatable, which is that you have COVID apartheid in Israel and vaccine apartheid now. And so what is the reality? Israel has been praised by people all over the world. Dr. Fauci, Saint Anthony Fauci has been praising Israel, for vaccinating so many people so quickly. But what's not talked about is that millions of Palestinians, 5 million Palestinians who live under Israeli military rule in the West Bank and Gaza Strip are not being given vaccines, even though they live under the full authority of the Israeli government. The reason we say apartheid is because what is apartheid? It's a system of government where you have two groups of people living under one ruler who are treated in completely different ways because of their characteristics. In this case, it's whether you're Jewish or not. And so you have in the West Bank and Gaza millions of Palestinians who are not being vaccinated. And Israel is actually making it harder for Palestinians to deal with COVID. In Gaza, you have 2 million Palestinians who actually the Palestinian Authority was able to get some doses of the Sputnik, the Russian vaccine, and Israel blocked them from getting into Gaza. But what you also have in the West Bank, and this really, I think, brings home the kind of Jim Crow apartheid nature of it, is that if you are an Israeli settler living in the West Bank on land stolen from Palestinians, you will get a vaccine.
Right.
But if you're a Palestinian living next door to that settlement, you will not get a vaccine.
I thought there was a post by Avi Mayer, who was responding to this. This is one of the people that is very upset by this post, by this joke. He said, every Israeli citizen, Jewish and Arab, Muslim, Christian, or if any of no faith, is eligible to be vaccinated. 2/3 of Israel's Arab citizens over 60 have been, which I think there's a really important key word there, which is every Israeli citizen. And who is allowed to be a citizen of Israel, even if they are under sort of like the rule and government pressure of Israel.
So he's telling a partial truth, you know, and he's lying by omission. Let me put it that way. Avi Mayer is one of the most skilled
I can put it up here.
Pro-Israel propagandists, and he's lying by omission. It is true that all Israeli citizens are eligible for vaccination. And who are Israeli citizens? Well, you've got about 5.5–6 million Jewish citizens. They will all be vaccinated, including the settlers in the West Bank. Then you have about 1.5 million Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. They are eligible for vaccinations. That's true. That's what he's saying. But what he's not mentioning is that 5 million Palestinians who live under Israeli military rule in the West Bank and under Israeli siege and control in the Gaza Strip are not being vaccinated and cannot be vaccinated because they have no independent ability to get vaccines. And we're not talking about here Israel vaccinating Palestinians in the West Bank out of the goodness of its heart. We're talking about obligations Israel has as the occupying power under international law, specifically the Fourth Geneva Convention. The Fourth Geneva Convention comes out of the horrors of the world wars. So it's supposed to be the distillation of the lessons that we have learned from the atrocities of the 20th century and before. And the Fourth Geneva Convention is very clear and explicit that the occupying power is responsible for the health, welfare, sanitation, and hygiene of the civilian population under its occupation. And the Geneva Convention is explicit about the occupying power's responsibility with respect to epidemics and disease. So Israel, by refusing to vaccinate the 5 million stateless Palestinians who live under its military occupation, is committing a war crime. So if Avi Mayer had any decency, which I can tell you from long experience with him, he doesn't, but if he did have any decency, he would be demanding that Israel immediately begin vaccinating the 5 million Palestinians living under Israeli COVID apartheid.